Thank you, and let me now turn to our colleague, Mr. Rehberg, for any comments he may have. Sir?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the subcommittee, for allowing me the opportunity to testify today on the Northern Rockies Ecosystem Protection Act. This is the third time I've testified before this Natural Resources Subcommittee this year. Consider this my request to be formally put back on the committee. I appreciate the opportunity to express the concerns I have with this legislation, share with you what I've heard from Montanans, and talk to you about our approach to public land management. After learning this bill was going to receive a hearing, I asked Montanans for their input on this legislation. In less than 1 week, I received responses from 7,117 Montanans, and I request unanimous consent to submit these petitions that I brought with me to the record. I might also point out to my colleague from New York City that I received within that week 12 responses from Manhattan, Montana in opposition to this legislation. Over 96% of the responses were adamantly opposed to this act. I brought their letters, faxes, and petitions to share with you today because these responses come from county commissioners, elected state representatives, ranchers, timber workers, recreational users, and folks who just want access to those treasured areas. This overwhelmingly response signifies the deep respect Montanans have for their public lands. One of the best qualities of Montana's diverse landscape is our ability to access the outdoors. Millions of acres of public land provide a variety of unique and exciting recreational experiences. Whether it's snowmobiling through the woods or hiking into the mountains for a hunting or fishing trip, these are some of the opportunities we cherish most and the activities that have defined our state as the last best place. Montana's long tradition of protecting public access to public lands has been built upon the principle that sound land management decisions are best achieved through cooperation. We understand that decisions affecting lands must be consensus-driven, local efforts that balance and protect our natural resources, recreation, and economic development. Over the last few years, I've had the pleasure to work with groups across Montana that are working on building consensus in their communities on public land management. These groups, spanning from wilderness advocates to timber companies, recognized the current way of doing business wasn't working. So, they agreed to come to the table and start talking. Working through their ideological differences, these diverse groups gathered maps, visited the Forest Service, and have held numerous public meetings to talk about their ideas and vision for the future of land management in their area. I've met with these groups numerous times since their formation. This year alone, I've met with them 11 times in Washington and in Montana to discuss their draft legislation and proposals. Their understanding of the needs in the communities and management of the land are rooted in experience and appreciation for what Montana has to offer. One of the best examples of this is the Blackfoot Challenge. I brought the map for you to look at. Over the past 2 years, the Blackfoot Cooperative Landscape Stewardship Pilot Project has made great strides towards creating thousands of acres of wilderness in the Seeley Lake Ranger District of the Lolo National Forest and balancing it with reasonable plan for sustaining timber harvest, motorized and non-motorized access. Most importantly, it has brought diverse groups such as the Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation, Pyramid Lumber, the Montana Wilderness Association, Rolling Stone Ranch, and the Wilderness Society together at the same table to hammer out a consensus agreement. On a larger scale, the Beaverhead Deer Lodge Partnership recommends more than 500,000 acres of public land be designated as wilderness. Every acre has been negotiated and scrutinized in Montana by organizations such as the Sun Mountain Lumber, Trout Unlimited, and the National Wildlife Federation. In Montana, consensus approaches created by interested local groups have shown to be the most effective way of managing our natural resources. Unfortunately, the Northern Rockies Ecosystem Protection Act threatens the Montana way of making land management decisions and has the potential to stop these collaborative partnerships in their tracks. This blanket designation of 23 million acres of land in Idaho, Montana, Oregon, Washington, and Wyoming is not the way folks do business in the West. The threat of locking up millions of acres in Montana and the surrounding states so folks from other areas can hold in their mind a mythical "the way it was" image and have a getaway spot for their weekend vacation or second homes is an affront to most Montanans. I would urge the sponsors of this legislation to come out, take an on-the-ground tour to see where multiple use management and wilderness can successfully coexist. What the sponsors of this bill don't seem to understand is that wholesale wilderness designation is a truly bad way of managing our nation's public lands. In essence, it would undercut much of the on-the-ground work that is already being done. Cooperative approaches such as the Beaverhead Deer Lodge Partnership and the Blackfoot Challenge are, while not perfect, a much more thoughtful and inclusive way of building consensus amongst diverse interests. The 7 million acres of public land in Montana that would be impacted by this act include many areas where some of the best local cooperative agreements are being negotiated. It would replace those local agreements with a top-down directive from Washington, D.C. Before we triple the amount of wilderness that currently exists in our state, we should rely on input from the people it would affect most, Montanans. A cooperative approach will ensure we address the needs of everyone, from our hardworking firefighters who require better access for forest fire management to the elderly and handicapped who can't access the wilderness on foot. This way, in the end, we can truly accomplish public access for all. Again, I oppose this bill, and I thank you for giving me the opportunity to testify.